On today's episode of the Modern Travel Agent Podcast, I'm joined by Robin Lawther, who's the Vice President of Expedia TAAP. Robin, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Chris, thanks for having me.
One of the first things that I wanted to share with our listeners is a little bit about your background and kind of the work that y'all are doing at Expedia TAAP.
Yep. And firstly, thanks for having me. In terms of background, I celebrated my 9th anniversary with Expedia at the weekend. So I guess I can say I've almost been here for a decade now, which feels like a mighty long period of time. But I'd kind of split that into two chapters. First part of my time at Expedia, and I've always worked on the B2B or business to business side of things at Expedia. I was in more of a kind of strategy and planning role. Then as of September 2020, deep in the midst of COVID, I made the great, but you could say crazy decision to take over our TAAP business, so our travel agent affiliate program. So I've been running that now for about 4 years or so. At the time I took it over, as I'm sure everybody that was in the industry at the time remembers, we had no idea how things were going to pan out. And of course, at that point, the focus was really just on survival. How do we help everybody get through this? How do we come out the other side? Thankfully, many of us have come out of the other side, and I think lots of people look at their business now and say it's thriving. But for me, kind of going into it was very much a story of TAAP was this business that we'd had for a long time. It had been growing and doing well, but we hadn't necessarily given it the love and attention that it wanted. And we saw an opportunity coming out of COVID to look at the business and say, actually, this could be something much bigger and much better. And so really over now the last 2 years or so, we've been putting a lot of investment behind that business. We still see a lot of opportunity to come. The market has come back just incredibly strongly after COVID. And there's a lot of things that we want to do to bring more of the Expedia benefits to as many people and as many people in the advisor community as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you're right. COVID was a complete shakeup, right? It forced a lot of companies to get very serious and lean as far as to look at how they're operating and the way that they're doing business. And I think, as you mentioned, on the travel agent side, I think a lot of agencies were forced to kind of break just the common routine things maybe that they'd been doing and really look at their business and figure out how they can make it better. So I totally think you're right. You know, for our listeners, maybe travel agents who aren't as familiar with Expedia TAAP, how can they partner with y'all? Like what can they book through you? What are the ways that they can better improve their business by working with you?
Yep. So Expedia TAAP is a platform we designed specifically for travel agencies. It has the benefit of looking much like Expedia.com does, so our consumer site, but we added a bunch of functionality on top of it to tailor that specifically for agents. So it has the benefit of the ease of the consumer side of the world, but with the additional added functionality for agents. At its heart, it's principally a tool for booking hotels, plus other lines of business alongside that, which could be air, car activities. It's really hotels where we focus. We've got over 3 million properties on the site. Not all of those are hotels, but it includes a lot of vacation rentals from our kind of what's called sister brand, Verbo. But it's hotels where we really spend our time and energy. For every hotel an agent books on the site, they get paid a commission for that. And we help them really through that journey. And with the number of hotels, I'd say we pretty much have everything out there that people need. If you want to book the highest end resort in the Maldives, you have it. If you want to book a hostel in Bali, we can also do that as well. And really everything in between. So someone spending $30 a night to someone spending $5,000 a night, we can cater for that full spectrum. And I think that leads us to, I think some of the topics we'll cover a bit more today, but around luxury. And that's really something that we think there's a lot of benefit that we can bring. There is just huge growth that we're seeing in the luxury space, particularly coming out of COVID. We've seen tremendous growth in this space. We've seen huge growth in booking volumes, but also so many guests and agencies looking to book higher end stays for their travelers. And that's where I think we have a good sweet spot in TAAP to be able to kind of play across that spectrum, but also offer people that selection and choice that they really need.
I think that's great. And I think that's awesome that, you mentioning sort of the functionality of the machine of Expedia, the booking engine and everything, and how much it can do, and just honestly how clean and sleek it is. Because I think the user experience for a lot of agents is super important. So that's great information for agents to know. And then I think a big part of it too, as you mentioned, is kind of meeting the client where they are, right? You're going to have different clients that want different things, and those expectations are going to change. You're going to have one client who you work with, and maybe the first trips that they book or as you mentioned, those hostels, those cheap, those less expensive options. And then as they continue to progress in their career and stuff, they're going to be looking to do spend a little bit more money, go on bigger vacations and things like that. So I think that that's great to have the wide range of options. Expedia offers a versatile platform for booking travel, but as a travel advisor, you also need a way to manage your client relationships. Transform the way you work with Trazzle, the CRM custom tailored for travel advisors. Ready to take your travel agency to the next level? Visit Trazzle.com to learn more. And to get into luxury travel, which is what you touched on, in a world where you can go online and without any friction, you can purchase something and have it delivered to you immediately. Client expectations around luxury and purchases it's just completely changed. Can you talk a little bit about how client expectations around luxury travel have changed?
Yeah, I think there's a few parts to that. And maybe I'll touch on just kind of the purchasing piece first of all. Yes, we're in a world where you or I can go on Amazon, we can click buy at 8 p.m. one evening, and the next day something arrives at our doorstep. And that could be a very high-end, expensive, let's call it a luxury item. That said, whenever we look at the world of travel, typically travel is not a case of just purchasing one component. Travel is a multifaceted thing that involves many different parts of that journey. Could be flight, could be accommodation or multiple accommodations. It could be ground transport, activities, et cetera, et cetera. Whenever you look at that, travel remains incredibly complex. So yes, anybody can go online and purchase one item of that, but it's how do you piece all of that together in a way that makes sense for a client? That's where I think, particularly as it gets to the world of luxury, that's where travel advisors really come to the fore. And the way I kind of think about it is for anybody going to purchase a holiday, there's kind of two things that come into that equation. One is time and one is experience. So do you have the time to do all of the research? And do you have the experience to know what is the right thing to buy? And particularly whenever we look at the world of luxury, and particularly if you take a demographic that, let's say, a working demographic, but someone that is earning at kind of the higher end of the income scale that wants to spend on a luxury trip, that's the perfect kind of person that doesn't have much time and doesn't necessarily have the experience or expertise on the destination where they want to go. Mm-hmm. And that's really where a travel advisor or travel agent can step in. Time is what they have. They're being paid to plan trips and facilitate great experiences. But they also have that deep, deep knowledge that if someone has 10 or 15 vacation days in a year, how can they tailor and create that perfect trip for them? And that's really why I think this is such a sweet spot for advisors. Now, to the kind of second part of your question on how are things changing? I mean, I think if you look at the world of luxury, you could say a kind of basic definition of it is kind of something where we're offering a very high quality of service and a very high quality of delivery. Take a hotel as an example. You've got the physical building that somebody goes to. You've got all the assets that sit within the hotel. Is that of the highest quality, the highest design standard? Is that going to meet a client's expectation? And then you've got the service that you layer on top of that, how they interact with the guests, what extra things they do to make them feel welcome, valued, and kind of recognize them for their stay. That's sort of the very basic bit of kind of what was luxury. Increasingly, though, what we hear is, okay, well, everybody can kind of satisfy that base level of service provision. But what is it that's unique, differentiated, and personalized about that really offers that edge in the world of luxury? And I think there's a couple of things to that. The word personalization is banded around a lot. I think the way I interpret it is if you go back in time, perhaps people were going on holiday and taking, let's call it luxury vacations, but perhaps to more mainstream destinations. So they were flying in business class or first class. They were staying at a five-star hotel in New York. They were having a perfectly curated trip. However, as the world has changed, and particularly as things like social media have evolved, there's a level of kind of aspiration out there. People see all the different trip types that are available in the world, more so now than ever before. And people see people going and having these unique experiences, these differentiated experiences. Maybe it's getting away from big cities and going to slightly different destinations. Maybe it's getting away from tourist crowds and going to somewhere that is unique and calmer and a bit further off the beaten path. And I think people are looking for a little bit more of, okay, what's different about my vacation versus the vacation that everybody else is taking? And I think that's kind of the first bit of it. And then you get into, okay, the person has gone on their vacation. Well, how do you tailor that and make it unique to them? What is it that hotels can do to really make that guest feel valued, make them feel differentiated from the person that's just walked into the lobby before them? And how can they then really ensure that they have a great experience once they're actually in that destination, from facilitating extra things? It could be planning events, theater shows, dining experiences, getting them access to unique things that perhaps if you just have a quick Google search, you don't necessarily find, but which someone can go the extra mile to really create something unique and differentiated for their customers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I like how you kind of split it up and talk about sort of different sides of the experience, of course, because you have the planning experience, like let's say the busy business professional, they don't necessarily have the time or desire to dive in, do all the research and stuff, and so that's a great opportunity for agents to really create that value by all the years of experience and all the places that they know. Because a lot of times they're just like, tell me where to go, I trust you. So I think that that's great. And then to sort of separate that from some of the things that agents maybe don't have as much control over. I mean, you can have relationships in destination to facilitate something in case they want to go above and beyond, but a lot of times it's kind of a handoff. And so a big part of it is also on the agent's responsibility to have that knowledge about the right properties to recommend that are going to meet their standards of luxury. Because as you mentioned, luxury means something totally different to each person. I feel like the standards at hotels and the level of training and stuff has continued to improve to a level that when you're walking around, you can, at a nice property, you can expect to meet the eye of every single staff member there. To flip it back on the booking side, and how can travel agents meet these high expectations that clients have? How can they deliver when somebody's used to going to a five-star luxury all-inclusive resort? How can they make that buying experience as luxurious as possible as well?
I think there's a few bits to that. I think part one is making sure you take the friction out of that process. As you said, lots of these people are busy people. They just want to know they're going to have a great vacation, but not be involved in the complexity of piecing it together. So first is taking the friction out of that process. Second is really showing and leveraging their expertise on how to put together a great trip. That goes right from kind of thinking about how do you curate the itinerary to make sure that the itinerary sits together and works well, but also thinking through all of the different elements of that trip to make sure that you've got confidence in where you're going to send your traveler. That's where some agents have the benefits of many, many years of expertise. And if someone comes in and says they want to go on vacation to London, that perfect. I know exactly where I'm going to send them within this price category, and I can trust that they're going to have a good experience at that hotel. And they may have even been to that hotel already or been there multiple times to know what it's like. However, there's also going to be destinations that they don't know, or perhaps they're newer coming into the industry. But this is also where that breadth of network that travel agents have is just so important, because they can pick up a phone, they can call someone else and say, hey, I've got someone that wants to go to Singapore. I'm not sure where to send them. What have you done with some recent clients? How can you help? How can you recommend? And then it's looking at, okay, how do I put all of that together in a way where, and also how do I leverage technology to make that trip as seamless as possible once the client leaves home? Of course, there are handoffs in this process, but there's still an element of, particularly for these groups of individuals we're talking about, or groups that are traveling, how is the agent still involved in that process? How can they make sure they're aware and on top of any changes or things that come along? Are they there at the end of the phone in case something goes a bit wrong for the client whenever they're in their trip? I always say it's travel and stuff will always go wrong. Hopefully just not that often. But also, how do agents build these networks in destination as well? So if they want to ensure something for a particular guest, they know who to contact at the hotel to do that. They know local tour providers or experience providers that they can absolutely trust, so that they know they give their trusted client over to them. They're going to have a great experience. One example, and I always use this when talking to colleagues internally, particularly at work on our consumer side. If you think of a customer transacting on Expedia.com, we hope that they always have a great experience. But as I say, it's travel and things will occasionally go wrong. It's bad whenever a customer has a bad experience, but there's lots more people keep coming in the door because of the nature of kind of the online world. However, if you take that same bad experience and you put that into the world of a travel agent, that perhaps has a customer base of not that many people, but that keep coming back to them, ensuring that there are great experience is just so critical to travel agents because of the level of trust that their clients are putting back on them. And so, really positioning travel agents to provide that exceptional end to end service is so important. And also, why we take service provision and service delivery so seriously to make sure we can support agents in that, because we know if something was to go wrong in this space, it's often even more of a problem for travel agents to deal with. And so, just being there for them every step of that way is just so important.
I love that. You covered on a lot of things that I like. I think, as you mentioned too, with travel, you can just expect a percentage of the time something's going to go wrong. That's just the nature of the business. And I also think in this industry, that's a great opportunity, especially when you're talking about how important the relationship is between the client, the customer, and the travel agent, especially where a lot of times some of the best relationships I had when I was booking travel was with clients where maybe it wasn't so easy, where maybe they had an issue in destination and I was able to deliver and meet that expectation. And then they had a whole new found level of trust and appreciation for the whole process. So I love that you talk about sort of the end-to-end experience and being available because that really is an opportunity for agents to overcome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as I say, things will go wrong. It also makes it difficult for agents. It's not necessarily a 9 to 5 job, particularly whenever you're talking about this luxury sector, where people generally have elevated and much higher expectations than normal. And if someone's paying $20,000, $30,000 to go on vacation, they want a level of return on top of that. Now, if you're the sort of person that can manage that and thrive in that environment, as you say, you can kind of become their best friend. People are also generally reasonable. People understand stuff will go wrong whenever you're traveling, but it's often just how do you respond to that? How quick are you responding? How can you go above and beyond to find solutions to these things and really show what additional value you can add into the process? Where then the next time that customer is going to go on vacation and think, well, of course I'm going to speak to Chris and have Chris book my holiday because he did such a good job on planning it before that I know he's going to be there for me every step of the way.
Something I wanted to circle back on, you kind of mentioned it earlier with social media a little bit and how that's affected some of the changing attitudes around luxury travel. As you said, they want something a little bit different. Can you share a little bit about sort of the changes that you've seen? I know you mentioned you've been with Expedia almost 10 years. What have you seen in the ways that social media has changed expectations around luxury travel?
Yeah, I think it's both around luxury and it's around travel in general. And it's also a bit of a hot topic right now, particularly in the news. And I'd say there's kind of both pros and cons to this. One, on the pros side, it's made that inspiration side of travel much easier. We're no longer reliant on a world of old for destinations to put out promotional marketing material, be that mailers, email blasts, brochures, to videos, to now hundreds to millions of people out there creating their own content on what they have done on vacation, posting out on Instagram, posting that on TikTok, getting that content in front of people so much faster, but also showing the vast array of different options that are out there and really the truly unique experiences that people can have. And so it's also provided a way on the luxury side to almost entice more and more people into that luxury sphere because there's just much greater exposure to that content. And of course, within the world of luxury, there's a whole spectrum of experiences and different people define luxury in different ways. Maybe it's someone spending $500 a night, while someone else would consider luxury being $5,000 a night. Now, one of those is within the grasp of more people than another, but social media can help entice more and more people to see what does luxury travel look like, what are the benefits of it, what are the experiences that they can have. And I think that's the good side of it, of it's opening people's eyes to all the different possibilities that are out there for travel. On the negative side of it, and this is not just a social media, or this is not just a luxury piece, but if we look right now, there's lots and lots of commentary in the news around over tourism. And particularly with social media, it can definitely play a part in that because we see a certain destination becomes the in destination. You've got influencers going to that destination, they're posting videos, and then all of a sudden there's a huge surge in tourists coming to that place and perhaps upsetting the dynamic that used to be there. There's, of course, been destinations that have been incredibly popular for a long period of time. They know how to deal with that volume of tourists that are going there. But there's other places that might have been that unique destination that maybe people weren't flocking to in their hundreds of thousands every year, that all of a sudden have got huge exposure on TikTok or Instagram. And all of a sudden now vast numbers of people want to go there. And so I think it's an interesting time in the industry as to how do you leverage the good things that social media can bring, but also how do you think about the sustainability of that as well? And what does that mean for over tourism and then not disrupting that luxury experience? Because if you go back to what makes a luxurious experience, part of its uniqueness, part of it's that feeling of kind of personalization and something just for you. If you go to that very expensive destination, but there's 1,000 other people there at the same time, that probably doesn't feel too luxurious to you anymore, regardless of how much you paid for the experience.
That's an interesting point. You'll see articles and stuff about it, but I think that we're going to continue to see those conversations, right, around sort of that respectable degree of tourism and making sure that when you're going to a destination that to the best degree that you can be to be respectful to the inhabitants, to the people who live there, to their way of life, and to make sure that you're able to both see beautiful new destinations, experience new things, and also respect the people who live there. So I think that that's a great point. We've covered a few different ways that the industry has changed, especially post COVID. From the travel agent side having to get lean, luxury expectations. How do you see the industry as a whole continuing to progress?
Given what we went through over the last 4 years, I can only look on this industry with a lot of positivity. There were some dark days during 2020 for me, and I suspect many others, as to what was this going to look like coming out of it. We saw disruption like never before for such a prolonged period. It was an incredibly tough time for very many people, and particularly as we look at or think about the community listening to this, a lot of travel agents had an extraordinarily tough time. A lot are sole proprietors, a lot had to fall back on savings, and for a lot, it was difficult to get through it. What I would say, though, is it was also surprising quite how many people pulled through this and quite how robust and resilient this industry actually can be. And so I look at everything that happened in 2020, 2021, and therefore it fills me with a lot of optimism as to where we're going to go in future. Now, I think coming out of that, again, there were questions about what's the sustainability of the world of travel advisors. Is this going to cause the great pivot where everybody suddenly starts booking everything online? And even I had those questions myself as we went through it, and we saw everybody moving their world to working on Zoom, everybody having everything delivered to their house from Amazon and not going out. And you kind of question, if this has happened so quickly, does this disrupt what the world of travel advisors looks like? In reality, we've come out of that. We've seen travel advisors being incredibly resilient. We've seen the value that people place on face-to-face, or at least kind of that personal contact that they have. And particularly if we go down the theme of luxury, there was a survey within the last year, I think it was from Deloitte, referenced, I think 85% of luxury travelers say they would value or like to use a travel advisor for booking their travel. So clearly there is the recognition and demand there for sure. And what's been interesting, having been out in lots of different parts of the world, meeting with agents in different places, a consistent theme is how busy they are. They may, in many places, not have enough staff, but the people that are there are incredibly busy and incredibly productive. And some are in the, you could say, fortunate position where they're saying, I actually don't need any new clients coming in right now. I've got so much business from my existing clients, I can't take anybody else on. So that kind of gives me a lot of confidence as to where we are and the stability of the industry. I think as you project forward, there's then a question as to what happens with technology, what happens with things like AI. Does that come along and disrupt this again? Again, given everything I've seen, given what we see about this industry, people valuing personal contact, people valuing deep expertise and connections, and that personal touch that agents can bring. Yes, I think AI will change things in future, but I think there's an opportunity for agents to use AI to change things for their benefit. I don't look at it and think, oh, in 5 years, AI will come and be doing everybody's job for them. I think we're very, very far from that. But I think there's things coming through AI that will be very helpful to advisors as well, and will put them in a position to be even more productive. And to that point on people perhaps having too much work right now, Well, maybe if you could help streamline some of your workload, you could keep all of your existing clients and have some more coming in if there's ways that technology can be used to work more efficiently and more effectively. So, in a
Mhm.
nutshell, a lot of optimism. Of course, can't predict the future, but I think there's a lot of good still to come in this space.
Yeah, AI, I think, is also a game changer. I mean, as you mentioned, for a lot of agents, I think one of the biggest areas of growth for them is to continue to streamline their business, to optimize so that they can continue to scale. And I think AI is an X factor in that. And so I guess just a second to any of the listeners listening right now, highly recommend you start doing your research. AI is here to stay, and it has all the potential to improve your life immeasurably. I mean, I know, for instance, something as simple as ChatGPT in creating content and writing emails. I mean, it really it can do a lot to instantly get you from 0 to 80%. Yes, you have to make adjustments, put your personal touches, but it does a lot to streamline it. So I think that's a key point and a lot of reason for optimism. I guess I just have one last question, Robin. It's been a pleasure having you on. For my audience, maybe travel agents who are booking Expedia TAAP, maybe new agents that they're not familiar with the platform, or what should be their next step to maximize all of the offerings that you'll have at Expedia TAAP?
Sure thing. I'd split that in up into a number of different areas. So first, if you've no experience with Expedia TAAP, I'd start by going to expediatap.com and signing up. That's the starting point. Second point, once you're there, we have lots of tools and guides that are available on the homepage. If you're not sure what to do, you can click on that, and that will talk you through the basics of how to ensure I'm set up to receive my commission payment, through to the basics of making a booking, through to how to change a booking. Secondly, many people signing up will not be signing up as their own agency, but will be coming in as part of a network or part of a host. If you're part of a network or a host group, make sure you're looking at what those hosts can do and looking at the collaborations that we have with many of those host agencies. We run webinars on a pretty constant basis. Sometimes those are webinars geared to how to get the most out of the platform. Sometimes those webinars are more geared to uh, building knowledge and expertise that could be on particular hotel chains or particular destinations. And so make sure you're connected in with your hosts to access all of that. And then I'd say with a very large sales team, particularly across the US, that is there to help and support people. So if people do need help, support, and guidance, we have our telephone number or email address on the website. Click on that or pick up the phone. There will be someone there to help you. If it's a basic query, we'll solve it there and then. If it's training, we can come in and run training for your agency. We can run webinars. We can do whatever we need to try and help support and make things as simple and easy as possible.
Beautiful, beautiful. For the audience that are interested in following along on your journey, do you have a specific platform that you post content to, or that you kind of stay in front of people on?
Probably for me, LinkedIn would be the most part. You can find me there, Robin Lawther, and yeah, give me a shout.
Beautiful. Robin, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.